Hey there. All right. Lesson 28. Make predictions based on historical facts. So, done and done, right? This is the last lesson on the last chapter of this book. We are finishing this book today. Yay! I'm so excited about that. And I'm so glad that I got to do this lesson with you guys today. Miss Neal is going to pick up with the next set of lessons, so you will see her next. We're not completely done with Out of the Dust, but we are done with reading the book. Like, how exciting is that? It's so cool. I'm so proud of you guys. Don't forget about the response links that you're going to click on, and you're going to type in your exit ticket information so that Miss Neal and I can take a real good look at how you're doing and how you're progressing. I have seen a lot of views on the videos, so I know you guys are working. And so again, I just want to say I'm very proud of you guys. So here we go. Let's jump into it. Okay. Um, Lesson 28, we're going to make predictions based on historical facts, but we can't forget the themes, right? Because that's what this entire group of lessons has been about that you've been with me so far. So yesterday or last lesson, we identified themes of specific poems and wrote about the theme of the importance of forgiveness. Okay, so remember we looked at that poem Met, and we really dug into it and analyzed it for what forgiveness meant and what it meant to Pa or Daddy's relationship with Billy Joe and vice versa, and how they're rebuilding that relationship between each other. So today what we're going to do is we're going to read Autumn of 1935, and then we're going to discuss themes which span the entire novel. So we've looked at themes really kind of intermittently here and there, but you guys are going to do a lot of thinking back, maybe even digging back into your work, specifically your notes and your reading logs, to really look at the themes that we've seen kind of created throughout the novel. Okay, and then last we're going to predict the future for Billy Joe and her family. So this is a really exciting chapter, and I think that you guys will enjoy it. So of course the things that you need today are a copy of your handy dandy novel, right? And again, if you don't have it, get out that PDF version. You can minimize this screen and pull it off to the side if you want to, or click back and forth, however it is that you're doing your lessons with this. And then of course your reading log in your purple folder. Okay, so Autumn of 1935. This is what I want you to do. I want you to read this chapter, the whole thing, right? Each poem. And as you read, I want you to take notes on at least 3 passages that contain a sign of hope. But in each poem, I want you to really dig in and to understand what the meaning of hope is in that particular poem or in that particular reading that you come across. Now, you're going to see the word hope several times, not in every poem, but several times. And when you see hope, the word hope, obviously, yes, that is an indication of that, okay, the author is laying down hope here, and you got to kind of dig in to figure it out. But then in other poems that you're going to read today in Autumn of 1935, not all of them have the word hope, but there is an indication of hope. So I wrote down some questions, and I'm trying to just get to them real quick. I wrote down some questions that I thought might help guide you along as you read and as you're looking for hope. So you want to look for things that indicate that there's a brighter future, right? So look for clues of a future for the family. Okay, you might also find that there are hints in the author's or in the writing that people have become happier in some sort of way. So that's a clue that you're looking for that hope theme, right? And then you want to look for anything that indicates positive tone when you do this. Okay, so you are going to read the entire chapter independently on your own. Again, if you want to dig in and get the audio version, it is pages, it's the last chapter, and so it's going to be pages 209 to 27. So 209 to 227, if you're looking at the audio version links, those are the page numbers that you're going to look for. And as you read, I want you to take notes. What you can do is when you're taking notes on finding hope, okay, just jot it down in your reading log. Just go ahead and set up today's page for lesson 28 and, write notes. And then just out beside that, I want you to write notes on at least 3 passages that contain a sign of hope. Okay, so go ahead and stop the recording now. Go ahead and read that chapter, take those notes on hope, and press play when you're ready to get going. Okay? All right. So you have read the chapter at this point, and we are going to look at one of the excerpts in the chapter Autumn of 1935. And this is in the poem. Let me quickly just kind of jump to where it is. This is in okay. Well, let's see if I can find that real quick. Okay, so I thought I had marked that. I know I made some notes on it, but it is on page 226, and it is the poem Finding a Way. And the excerpt says, Daddy said he'd try some sorghum, maybe some cotton, admitting as how there might be something to this notion of diversification folks were talking about. And yes, he'd bring the grass back like Ma wanted, where he wasn't planting anything else. He'd make new sod. So what it's asking us to do is look at the bolded words and what context clues can help you use. What are the context clues to help you use in trying to define or figure out what these words mean, right? So sorghum and diversification. So I would definitely think that when you read sorghum in this particular case, Daddy said he'd try some sorghum, maybe some cotton. So we know that cotton is a crop, right? So we're kind of getting into our background knowledge here. We know that cotton is a crop. So it says try some sorghum, maybe some cotton. So I am going to use my context clues. Here's the clue that it's talking about crops and assume that sorghum is also a crop. Now, in this particular case, think back to when Ma was alive. Ma and Daddy would bicker sometimes about how to proceed with the farm, right? And how to proceed with crops. And Ma actually suggested to him that he should try other crops and not just wheat. Maybe, that they could grow something else. And Daddy was dead set against it, right? Like he said, absolutely not. I came here to grow wheat and we're going to grow wheat, right? And so now all of a sudden that we're further into the chapter and Daddy has changed quite a bit up to this point, all of a sudden now he's starting to see that, hey, maybe there is something to finding some other crops. And that something is right there in our next bolded word, right? Because it says, admitting as how there might be something to this notion of diversification. Okay. Let's take this word apart for just a second. We see that the TION, right, gives us that action of, right? So let's look for the root word here, diverse. So he's talking about being more diverse in his growing. So what does diverse mean? Well, if we have a wide range or a variety of something, then there is diversity to it. There are a lot of different types of it, right? So in agriculture, where if you have a farmer who has many different crops, he has a diverse amount of crops or a diverse array of crops, right? He has a lot of different crops. So the diversification, this goes back to those informational text or informative texts that we read that tell us all about the different farming plans or farming practices that the farmers were trying, or the government was trying to teach the farmers to do these different things in order to save their land through the New Deal and some of those programs, right? Because I mean, at this point, where are we at? We are in 1935, and we are in the depths of the Great Depression, right? The worst, or the peaks of the Great Depression, kind of like where we are right now in our pandemic, right? We are in the peak of our pandemic. So we're in the worst of it. And so, hey, there's got to be something to diversifying my crops here. Daddy's finally taken on that idea. And he even, it kind of goes on to even bringing Ma into the picture. And he said that he would bring the grass back like Ma wanted. Ma wanted there to be grass in the yard. So I thought that that was kind of an indication that there was some hope in Daddy, that he is hopeful that there is more to his farm than what there has been so far. So using our context clues, learning how to dig into that text and figure out what words mean that we may not always know what they mean upon first reading them, right? So let's move on to what our specific assignment is today. So which themes reoccur throughout the novel? Okay, so what I want you to do at this point is you're going to make a list of 3 theme statements that apply to the novel as a whole. I want you to go and dig back in to your poems and where you jotted some notes about where you found hope, as well as I want you to dig into your previous notes on theme statements that we have taken so far and look at those various themes and look at what different themes you have seen across the novel as a whole. What kind of different things from the beginning to the end? Some of those guiding questions to help you with this particular activity would be, you know, how did the characters change? What did the characters learn? And just kind of what was the message behind the entire novel? So, you know, kind of think back to the beginning of the novel and work your way to the end of the novel, and just really thinking about what maybe Billie Jo learns about herself, what Daddy learns about himself, maybe what how the townspeople learn that there are hardships in the Dust Bowl, right? And then just what kind of major changes have occurred throughout the life of the novel, and if you can pick out those major changes, then you'll start to see that pattern of, okay, this happened, what was the message behind that? This happened, what was the message behind that? And you'll see kind of like a recurring theme here. Just kind of write down the evidence that you use or that you find in each one of the statements that you write down. And like I said, you're just going to write those 3 little notes down, or those 3 little statements that seem to kind of go across the whole novel. One of the theme statements that I wrote down, just to kind of give you an idea of what I was thinking when I was going through this lesson, never give up hope, right? That occurs throughout the novel. That starts at the very beginning with Billie Jo loving the piano so much and wanting so badly to be able to go and play for these people at the plaza, and Ma not letting her, right? So she's never going to give up hope on that. And eventually Ma kind of gives in on that, doesn't she? And then, you know, giving up hope on the wheat and giving up hope. Don't ever give up hope, because there might be light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, right? Another one that I wrote down was, home is more than a plot of ground or land, right? It's where your family is. Billie Jo eventually learns through all this that she can leave the Dust Bowl, but the dust can't leave her, right? So write down just a few theme statements that you think apply to the entire novel, okay? And when you're ready, press play again. All right, this has been a pretty quick end lesson today on theme, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to think back to the timeline. Now, This is a little hard because you don't have your timelines. Remember that time that we made those great big long timelines and we hung them up in the room? Well, this is where this would be applicable today, or this is where that would play in. So I want you to really listen to what I say, make notes maybe about what I'm saying here over the next few minutes, because I'm going to kind of give you a quick review of that timeline so that you have it in order to have the historical information that you need to support your ideas. Okay, so you're going to review your timeline and note where the novel begins and ends, and I'll do that for you in just a second. And then based on that timeline, what is Billie Jo and her family's life likely going to look like over the next 5 years? Okay, so if you remember, first of all, our novel, our specific novel, is just 1934 and 1935. But when we created that timeline, we looked at it from like kind of where all of this came from, right? The background knowledge behind the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and how Billie Jo and her daddy probably ended up where they did. So we started our timeline really early, around 1919. And of course, we know that between 1917 and 1918 was the end of World War I, right? And we discussed in class what that meant for the nation, that they were coming off kind of a big high, so to speak, on the economy, and that the economy was doing great, and that they went into the roaring 20s. And I think we even noted, we looked at the wheat chart on page 17 in your purple folders. That could help you with this also, because wheat back then, starting around 1919 and going to about 1928, the wheat sold for $2.45 a bushel. Okay, $2.45 a bushel. Now listen to what I'm going to say next, because it's going to blow your mind. But in 1929, when the stock market crashed, right, and the Great Depression began, wheat plummeted. And around 1932, wheat sold for 49 cents a bushel. So just kind of let that sink in. You know, Billie Jo and her daddy were potentially selling wheat for $2.45 a bushel, and then bam, the Great Depression hits and it drops to 49 cents a bushel. But around 1933 is when the plains were hit the hardest with the Great Depression. That is when the major drought began around 1930, between 1930 and 1933. So they went about 3 years without getting hardly any rain. So 1933 was really the beginning of the worst times for the Great Plains people and the people of the Dust Bowl. And you notice our story is 1934 and 1935. So our story fits right in there, and it ends December of 1935. Okay, and it ends with, you know, Billie Jo's dad has gotten remarried now. So we have Luis in the picture, and you know, things seem to be coming around, right? There seems to be hope. After you dug into your part of the chapter, and you went back and you were reading for hope, what were some of the things that you found, right? So some of the things that I noted was that, you know, Daddy's seen a doctor, right? He's getting the spots looked at, and the doctor is very hopeful about Daddy healing and not really having cancer. And Billie Jo gets her hands looked at, and the doctor tells her that just use them, Billie Jo, they're going to be fine, right? So, and she begins to use them. She begins to work them more. She starts playing the piano, right? The weed is growing. Hallelujah, right? The weed is growing. Daddy is even, you know, diversifying his crops, right? And looking into doing sorghum and looking into doing cotton now. And Billie Jo is playing the piano again. That's hopeful. You know, Luis is a positive influence on the household. She brings that motherhood feeling, or that mother-like figure back into the household that I think Billie Joe was probably longing for the most, right? So, um, so we end in December of 1935. And what this prompt is asking you to do is kind of look at the next 5 years, so 1936 to 1940, and kind of see um, what their life might be like depending upon the things that take place over these next 5 years. So this is where you have to work a little bit, because you need to use factual evidence to support your ideas of why you think the family's next 5 years will look a certain way, right? Some of the things that I wrote down that we might have added to our timelines in the classroom, because I don't even have mine, guys. So I tried to go back and look at some of this stuff. Well, the first thing is a lot of the photos in the informational articles that we looked at were published around 1936. So that's something that you might want to take a look at to kind of see kind of how things progress or move. And then, of course, taking a look at 1939, it was still somewhat dry during that period of time, but World War II begins and the Great Depression ends during that time. Okay, so I want you to take a look, and even if you want to do a little research here and say, okay, what was the United States like between the years of 1936 and 1940, to just kind of get you thinking about different things. And look for some major events that took place during that time. I'm going to give you World War II begins, okay, and the Great Depression ends in 1939, sorry. And I want you to think about back when we had our discussions about World War I and where the United States was during World War I and the ending of World War I and why. Not just, oh, well, the Roaring Twenties came after. I want you to give me some specific details of what you think life is like for Billie Joe and her family. Now, a 3-person family, right, over the next 5 years, supporting your ideas with information from historical facts, not just you think, but support it with historical facts, things that actually happened. That's what you're going to do today, okay? So once you've completed all of that, this is what you've done. In this lesson, you examined themes that apply to the novel as a whole and identified evidence in the story to support that. You also predicted what is likely to be in store for the characters in the future, which to me is kind of fun to think about because they've come such a long way, right? They have really had some desperate times, and they are starting to have some good times now, right? That we started out good, got really desperate. Now what we need to do is just kind of encompass everything that we've learned about the Dust Bowl and about this time in our United States history, and think about kind of how it applies to the actual historical events and this novel, and think about how the author has written this novel and why she has written it the way that she has written it based on the historical facts or events that have happened in the United States, and kind of apply those things together, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. So I thought this was pretty funny because this is the next step in the process. This is where Miss Neal is going to come in. Miss Neal is going to jump in, and she's going to start doing some writing with you. And this is where you are going to apply that knowledge. That not just I've read this novel and I understand Karen Hess and what she's trying to relay to me, or what the message is that she's trying to get to me about what life was like in the Dust Bowl, but I also am going to apply it to what life was really like in the Dust Bowl. I think that it's very similar to factual information, but this is where you guys are going to put your writing skills into action and apply your thoughts with your pen, right? Okay, so I'm very excited to see what you guys do over the next week or so, and Miss Neal is taking the lessons over at this point, but I've really enjoyed it, and I'll be back to see you soon. Okay, so dig in and get that work done for today for lesson 28, and Ms. Neal will be back with you for lesson 29. See you soon. Bye-bye.